I don't know that like I set out to be bold and fearless or anything. I'm actually very fearful. And I think that if you're not fearful, you're probably not taking significant risk. But I think you do have to go to some degree too far to be able to edit something.
There's such a strong affinity for what I do and how I get there that on the other side of it is also this extreme terror. You can call it fear or you can call it it's terrifying, I think, when I come up with an idea that I'm in love with and I know that to get there, it's going to be scary. Yeah, I feel like I got to a point where I need to take on scary projects. I need to know that I'm terrified in a way in order for it to be the right project, and I'm excited about it and exhilarated. But I also need to be confident in that every other time I've felt this way and all the things go wrong and everyone's running around on set saying this isn't happening right and there's a problem and there's a lot on the line. I know that every time that's happened in the past, we've figured it out.
So imagining the impossible. I'm thinking back to Santos and this idea of heavier than air flight, which obviously was a new thing at that point. Imagining the impossible is part of that process, a part of straddling reality and the imagination, I imagine.
Can't be easy. If it's easy, you're doing something wrong. If something makes me uncomfortable, I go for it. That's what I do. Like if I'm in a room and someone makes me uncomfortable, I go talk to them. I had a teacher once in grad school who wasn't like such an amazing teacher, but he said, do your thing, find your thing, do it, and just do it all the time. Look at life through that lens. Everything should be that thing, and success will come sideline you. It will just come right up to you. But just look forward. Don't look for success.
The only thing worse than not doing anything in my mind is actually convincing yourself that you're doing enough, but actually really only focusing on the things that have very little impact. Because now you're not even the person who you can have this conversation with and say that actually, that the pound of beef or the kg of beef that you had this week, that actually cost 10,000 liters of water to be used, right? And it's not to say that you change every part of your behavior, but I think it's being willing to admit to yourself what are the values that you care about. And actually kind of in theme with this conversation, somebody I think asked the question, what does it mean to be fearless? And I think to me, being fearless is actually not being afraid of facing yourself.
I see young teenage activists who are refusing to accept the status quo, and 50 years after Mai 68 in France, May 68, and I was talking earlier about Berkeley, what was happening here at Berkeley University, and all this wave of activism and liberation struggles. I think that we need to empower these young leaders who really believe that they can make a difference.
The types of leaders that we need to promote and talk about and reward has to be different from the ones that we promoted and talked about and rewarded previously, right? So, for example, it's when we think about the people who, when you talk about diversity, it's actually not just gender and it's not just color. It's about types of personalities, that introverted person, that maker, who might actually have more of this mindfulness about longevity versus that really charming, charismatic leader who's focused on delivering the next quarter results to their investors.
I believe in a citizen revolution, but we need leaders. We need people who's gonna just make that first step. It's crazy to see how we just became so powerful at certain things like health, care, all these. It's just so much better, but also we living more time and then we have no time. We always feel frustrated. It's always everybody feels like so frustrated at the end of the day, saying like that day was too short. So there is a problem of connection to just things. I feel like anybody should just like go into a forest to just like hold a tree, see what's going on, see what's happy, you know, because it's magical, and we just don't see the magic anymore at all, and that's just the problem. And we hate people who are so naive. For example, if you say like I'm holding trees all the time, and when I'm saying that, they're just people are just like, yeah.
I've also most recently embraced this notion that I don't believe in hope. Hope is actually a really, really bad thing. And the reason is it makes it someone else's problem, right? It's like, I hope things get better. No. If you hope things get better, that just kind of says, I'm actually not going to do something about it. But there are other people who are really nice and, they do. I hope so. It's like, I hope the weather is great. Actually, the weather will be what it will be, right? So I think there is sort of like, again, in this sort of vein of controversialism, let's stop being hopeful. Like, the world will be what we make it.
Basically, yeah, the most interesting things to me always came out of like what the kids figuring it out on their own. If they didn't have a venue, they'd rent a generator and do generator shows out in the. It's that to me is the spirit of San Francisco. Just if there's no venue, we just make our own venue. If there wasn't a gallery, we just make our own. The streets are basically our gallery. So.
I think, when Chaz talks about young people still coming out to San Francisco, still following an idea of the Bay Area, that's a strong part of it. I mean, I think that is part of what brought me here almost 30 years ago or something, and brought me back too. So I think that energy is still here, but it's a little convoluted. And I think that the market around art, maybe that's something that's not a San Francisco-driven situation at all.
I'm against almost everything, in the most basic sense of things. So it's to be able to live here and still feel like it's just as vibrant as it's ever been to me. Like all the different communities coming in and different. It's still. It feels just as radical as ever. It feels like a radical culture to some degree. As far as pioneering, like the graffiti is regressing into like a more raw. They just will fill up a fire extinguisher with spray, like a bucket paint. So you could just do like 3-story tall tags now. So it's I think we're still pioneering, like in a raw, like expressionistic. Antagonistic too, which I like. It's just you could take out a whole building with a fire extinguisher now with paint in it. So it's I like that spirit. It's just like a resistance that's always been in San Francisco.
You cite that there's a kind of revolutionary spirit here, and I think what happened here, which was always so important, which we hope would happen in the future, was a solidarity between people who were living related lives. This kind of solidarity which admires the concept of resisting or responding or acting. This is something we still see.
Thank you so much for your insights, and we hope these conversations will continue in the space.